Hello, sculpture students. It's Mr. Shaver. I am going to do a demonstration on beginning wheel throwing. Now, if you look online, you're going to find hundreds and thousands of videos that are really cool on how to do wheel throwing. Everyone does it slightly differently. There's a bunch of ways to do it. There's not one way to do it. My purpose in this video is to go over the absolute basics, because sometimes those videos just skip to how to do the forms as opposed to just really getting started. So I wanted to show you what I have here. I've got my bat. The bat is what goes on your wheel, okay? There's some holes here where it connects to some pieces sticking up on the wheel. That's what you're going to throw on, because when you are done, then you can just lift this up and your project is on there and you can move on. And if you want to make another one, you put a new bat down, you can go from there. I have a bucket that is about 3/4 full of water. Make sure you have enough water. You're going to want a lot of water for the project. And then I have my tools. I got a couple loop tools. I like this tool for finishing at the end. A larger loop tool. Some of those are better for trimming. This finger tool is really helpful for if you're making something tall. That's really good. We also have some of these longer sponges, because sometimes when you make something tall, it's hard to get down in there and get the water out. So this is really helpful. And then we have our ribs. I got a silicone rib, I have a wood rib, I have a metal rib, and then I have my sponge. Those are all very helpful to get you started, so you want to make sure you have those things when you get going. You also want a needle tool. This is really helpful when you're trimming, okay? By my feet here, I have a brick on my left side. That is because on the right side, we have our pedal. Okay, this is what dictates the speed, okay? But if you have 1 foot up while you're trying to throw, you're going to throw your whole body weight off. So it's good to have a brick to put your other foot on. On the right side of the wheel, there is an off-on button. There's also a reverse button. If you're left-handed, you're going to want to do the exact mirror of what I'm doing. I'm doing it right-handed right now, so it's going to spin counterclockwise, okay? Let me grab my clay real quick. All right, this is freshly wedged clay. It's 2 pounds of it. So I'm going to get it into a nice ball shape. Don't worry about it being perfect, you guys. Just get a ball going. Makes it a little more easy to use when you get started. The other thing you want to consider, all right, before you even start throwing is, what am I throwing? Am I throwing a bowl? Am I throwing a cylinder? Sometimes you just want to get on and see what happens. But the setups are slightly different, okay? So if you have a plan in mind, if you're doing a cylinder, your setup and how you're going to start opening it is different than if you're doing a bowl. In this situation, I'm going to go ahead and make a cylinder because I think it'll be easier to see in the video, and it's a good opening round of how to do it. I'll make another video on how to do a bowl. These seats are adjustable, okay? So you want to make sure that your body can get out over the top of it. Right now my chest is out over the middle of the wheel. That way you can kind of see what you're doing and you're not trying to throw like this. This is really bad for your body, and it's not a strong position. You want a nice strong position. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure it's on, going the right direction. Okay, test it out. So the pedal can make it go really fast. This is all the way up. I can take my foot off the pedal and it'll keep going. So if you need to take a break, you can do that. But I'm going to start off a little bit slower. I'm going to put a little bit of water. So I'm going to put this down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put a little bit of water right here in the middle. So it makes a little circle. Okay, that's so that the clay will stick to it. We don't want too much water. We want that kind of suction cup action, right? Too much water, the suction cup doesn't work. Too little water, it doesn't work. All right, so I'm going to push this right in the middle. I'm going to slam it down. The very first thing I need to do is center the clay. If you do not center the clay, everything else is really difficult. Centering takes a little bit of time to get used to, so you have to be patient in learning it. But once you got it, once you figure that out, everything else goes so much easier. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I'm getting a lot of water on my hands. You're going to see me do that a lot, okay? You want the clay slipping through your fingers as opposed to grabbing it. As soon as you start building up a lot of clay on your hands or you feel like you're gripping it, you got to get more water, okay? So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn it on kind of slowly, and I'm going to clap it. This is just going to help me get started in the centering process, and it's going to make sure that it's not coming off of the wheel. All right, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do coning. So I'm going to pull the clay up into a cone shape, and then I'm going to push it back down and do a gumdrop. So I'm using these muscles here to kind of push in, and these top muscles up here, kind of your skill muscles, to kind of guide it. All right, so I'm getting a lot of water on here, so it's nice and slippery. I'm starting at the bottom, and I'm just squeezing in with those bottom parts of my hand towards your pinky finger, and the top parts of my hand, I'm kind of guiding it into a cone shape. So I'm kind of pulling it up. And if you're going too slow, this can actually be a little bit more difficult. Don't be afraid to get a little speed. All right, getting it all the way up can be challenging, but if you give yourself a little speed, it's actually easier. All right, I got a cone shape. Now I'm going to squish this back down and do a gumdrop. The reason we do this over and over is that eventually we'll center it. So I'm going to use this part of my hand here to go on top, like right here, okay? And I'm going to push down, but I'm also pushing forward a little bit because we have to work with the spin. And then my right hand is going to guide it into a gumdrop. When you're wheel throwing, one hand is always doing the muscle work, the other hand is doing your guide and skill work. If you're right-handed, your right hand is doing the skill work and your left hand is doing the muscle work. I know it seems like that's the opposite, but you want your right hand, because you're more confident with it, to do that skill work and just use the left hand to kind of do the pushing and the pulling. All right, so I'm going to push this down and forward, and I'm guiding it with my right hand into a gumdrop. Flatten that out a little bit. Now I'm going to do that again. You want to do this kind of more than once. And what you're trying to feel for is the clay is nice and even and your hands aren't moving much. If your hands aren't moving much, that means that you've got it centered. You'll feel it when it happens. Like if there's a wobble in it, you'll know. And when there's no wobble in it, you'll know that as well. So right now it's feeling pretty good. Now the clay that I'm not worried about is the clay right here at the base. Okay, I'm not trying to scoop all that clay up. Okay, I could spend all day trying to center all that clay and scoop all that clay up. My hands are guiding just above that little excess clay. All right, I'll flatten out that top a little bit so it's nice and round on the top. Now I'm going to squeeze it back in just a little bit because I'm making a cylinder. It's a little bit taller of a gumdrop. Here's the other thing you have to remember. You always go easy on, easy off. I don't immediately start squeezing when I put my hands on there. If you do that, you can throw it off center. I don't let go real quick either. So I get my hands on there nice and easy, and then I'll slowly squeeze it. And then when I let go, I ease off as well. So easy on, easy off, okay? So next thing I'm gonna do is I need to open this up, right? Now, if you've got a lot of clay down here, right at the very base that's bothering you, you can use one of these ribs to just kind of take a little bit of that off. That might be helpful, but you don't have to do that. It's just if it's bothering you, you can do that. So now I'm going to open it up. So my right hand is going to find center, all right? So my thumb is kind of finding center here. And my left hand is going to push it in. So my knuckle is kind of sitting right on top of the middle, and then my left hand is going to push that knuckle down, all right? So the left hand is doing the pushing, and the right hand is doing the guiding. So I'm starting to grip the clay on the inside, so I'm going to add some more water to the inside. Now, you don't want to go all the way through, right? We don't want to go through the middle. So I'm going to test it and kind of pick up and look at how much space I have. That's one way to do it. I have quite a bit down there, so I can go a little bit further. And we're just opening it up. That's all we're doing right now. So I'll lift this up. Maybe I'll lift it up. So you can just see the inside right now real quick. That's what it looks like, right? All it is an opening to get me started, all right? Now the other way you can test how far down it is I've cleaned my needle tool off. You can kind of stick the needle tool down there and see how much clay you have. I got probably about 1/2 inch, which is probably a little bit more than I need, but I think that's a good start. All right, now we're going to open it up. Okay, now we're going to open it up. So when we do pinch pots, we put our thumb inside, right? And we pinch with our thumb on the inside. When we do wheel throwing, the thumb goes on the outside. Okay, so I'm actually going to come over to the side here. I'll pull myself over so you can kind of see what my hands are doing. So it makes a little more sense. It's a little awkward, but I got this. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze, right, with my left hand. The right hand acts as a guide. So what you want to do is you put your finger out, close it in like you're doing like a knuckle punch. You ever done that? This part of your knuckle, this part of your hand is going to guide your hand like this. So you're holding it like this, and then your thumb is going to go next to it. All right? So I put my thumb next to it, my first two fingers on the inside, and then I'm going to squeeze. And as I squeeze, I'm going to pull up. And my right hand is keeping that hand from moving. It's pushing in a little bit. My right hand is pushing in a little bit. My left hand is just squeezing and pulling up. Okay? So I'm going to repeat that process. So there's a little bit of a scoop action in the bottom. I've got my finger, right? My hand is the guide, thumb next to it. So that way my left hand, all it's doing is worrying about squeezing. And again, just like when we do pinch pots, you want to just try and get nice and even. Okay? We don't want this top to flare out much wider than the bottom right now because we want to get it taller. This is the same thing again with the pinch pot. So if you've practiced some pinch pots, this will make more sense. Okay? So I still want to go up. I have quite a bit of clay. I can go up a lot higher. So again, my hand's going to go inside. I'm going to do a little scoop there in the bottom. My right hand is next to it, pushing in. And then I'm just nice, even pressure with my left hand coming up. You can see it's starting to get bigger. Now, if this trick is really difficult for you, you still want to work on it, but I also like to use the sponge. So you can put the sponge on the clay, right? And then put your thumb next to that sponge, right? So if I move my thumb there, right next to that sponge, and the sponge is guiding my thumb. So if I want a cylinder, again, I'm pushing in with my right hand with the sponge and just guiding it up with my left hand. I'm going to do that a couple more times. Whoops, there goes the sponge. If you drop a tool, turn it off and then grab it. You can see I always go back for more water too. I think of it like every time I get done with a move, and a move is like one pull or one little thing I try to adjust, then I go back for more water. Now you're thinking, man, how is it nice and even? Well, again, I've practiced this, but I spend a good amount of time wedging this clay so it's really consistent. Now you can see that the top part is starting to get a little bit wider, and I still want to go a little bigger. So I'm going to get my hands wet, and I'm just going to close it in a little bit, nice and gentle, so that it doesn't go too wide on me. All right. Now the other thing you might be noticing is that the top is slightly uneven. Just like when we do pinch pots, we're going to trim that. All right. But I'm going to get my height first because I still have some clay down here I can work with. So I'm going to go down in. So I got my whole hand in there at this point. Now, again, if that part is difficult for you, you have this tool that you can use. So this one, I'm going to switch, right? It's kind of this finger tool. I'm going to switch and do my right hand on the inside, and I can use that to kind of help pull up as well. Now that's a little bit trickier, so it's really for stuff that's pretty tall. I want to go a little bit taller, so I'm going to squeeze this back in a little bit. I'll do one more pull for you, and then I'll show you how to trim it. Okay, so I'm going to go down in. I'm going to make it nice and even. I'm pulling up, pushing in. All right, pretty good cylinder. Now, I'm going to trim a little bit this unevenness off the top. So I'm going to just go a little bit lower than where the unevenness is. And then let the needle tool do its job, okay? Go nice and even. and let the needle tool do its job. You should be able to pick it up. Again, easier said than done. It takes a little practice, but you can get it. So now I've got, it's pretty even. It's a nice cylinder. I can build it up a little bit more if I want. I could flare this out a little bit. If you want something that has a bit of a belly to it, right? Or that it's going to flare out in the middle a little bit. Again, don't let the top get too wide. And then you can go on the inside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sponge, and my sponge is going to be underneath where my fingers are pulling, right? So instead of just being on the outside of it like this, right? I'm going to go slightly underneath it so that I can get a little bit of a belly. So check this out. Go down in. And my sponge is right underneath. I can do that again. So sponge right underneath where my fingers are. Now I've got a little bit of a belly. Okay? That's one more trick for you. And then if you want to flare the top, that's pretty fun to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze the neck a little bit. So I'm just kind of using my middle fingers. I'm just doing a little bit of a squeeze. This one I use my pointer fingers just a little bit, nice and even. Okay? And then if I want to flare the top, I can guide it. So I'm going to have one hand doing the skill work again, right? I'm guiding it. I'm just going to pull that out a little bit. Now your last step, I mean that was a lot of extra stuff, but your last step to nice up the lip is you make a little letter A with your fingers and just kind of rest it on the lip. You can kind of round that out so you don't have a sharp lip, okay? Now, I'm also an advocate of trimming a little bit while you're on the wheel. So there's a lot of clay down here I don't need, okay? And you're going to see all these, you can see like a lot of the texture on here. That's going to come off in step 2, which is trimming. But if you want to clean it up a little bit, you can do it with the sponge. You can try out using the silicone rib just to get rid of some of that texture. But again, we'll get a lot of that done in the trimming. But I want to get rid of some of this clay down here. So you have to think about the profile of what you're doing. And the profile, right, is the outside edge, the outside line. So I want my profile to kind of come in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of chop down the side. So I'm going to move back over so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. Okay. And we're not trying to do a whole lot, but a little bit of trimming while the clay is wet saves a lot of time when the clay is a little bit drier. All right, here we go. So I'm just going to come down the side and just cut off some of that clay that I don't want as part of my piece. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I made a little line. Let's see if I can just kind of take it off so you can see. There we go. So if I turn it, you can see about that's how much clay I'm taking off. Okay, so that's going to help me with trimming it later when we flip it upside down and trim it. Now this extra clay can go, there's a bucket to the left of me where some of that clay can go so we can recycle it later. Okay, if I want to clean it up a little bit more, don't get greedy, but you can do a little bit of loop tool work here. If you start getting greedy, it's going to mess everything up. Let's do a little bit here, a little bit there. But doing just a little bit of this work while it's wet will save you some time later on. All right, so that's pretty good. I'm going to do more cleaning up of this later when I go to trim it, so I'm not worried about the lines and stuff. The last thing I'm going to do, all right, is I'm going to take my wire tool. This is also where people mess up, so make sure you do this right. I'm going to kind of wrap it around my fingers, and I'm going to go in front of it. I'm going to push down and pull back. Now make sure you're really pushing down, because if you don't, it's going to cut up into your piece. Okay? Oh, one more step I forgot to mention. There is some water down on the inside of my piece. I'm going to squeeze my sponge out. I'm going to put it inside and get some of that water out from the inside. You should just soak it up so you don't have a big pile of water sitting in the bottom of your piece. That's not great. Okay, so again, I'm going to push down pretty hard, pull back. That releases it, but instead of having to take it off, since we have enough bats where we don't have to do that, you might have to pry it a little bit, but just get under the wheel, the bat. You can take it off. There you have a piece. When you store it, just put a piece of paper on top of the lip. So just fold up a piece of paper with your name on it, set it lightly on top of the lip, and then drape a bag over it like a blanket. That way the bag does not mess up your lip, and it also allows it to get some air, because we want to trim this piece. We're going to need to flip it over, and it's got to dry a little bit before we do that. Okay, so this piece is done. Hopefully that was helpful. Obviously there's a lot to learn with this skill. That's just one thing, but hopefully that'll get you started in wheel throwing. So hope you guys enjoyed that and it was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.